Mrs. Miniver was not just a beloved Oscar-sweeping war drama. It was a Hollywood-engineered morale bomb, a psychological operation crafted on Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer soundstages to manipulate a neutral America, and a propaganda tool so devastatingly effective it drew begrudging admiration from Winston Churchill, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and even the architect of Nazi propaganda himself. Behind the charming village roses, the stiff upper lips, and the cozy family vignettes lies a production forged in controversy, scandal, and global urgency. An on-screen mother who scandalously married her on-screen son, a German-born director who enlisted to fight the Nazis, only to be haunted by the film he made. A climactic speech that was printed on leaflets and airdropped behind enemy lines as a weapon. This was not just a movie, it was a meticulously calculated act of cinematic warfare, wrapped in the comforting blanket of a middle-class family melodrama. The quaint, comforting image of Mrs. Miniver is a mirage. I am about to reveal 20 weird, shocking, and pivotal facts that will completely shatter that illusion and show you how this film did not just depict history, it actively sought to change its course. And stick around for the bonus fact that exposes the shocking, tragic double life of the real woman behind the legend, a life of secret rebellion and profound regret more dramatic than anything the screenwriters could invent. Fact 1. The star married her on-screen son in a scandal that rocked Hollywood. The most infamous and enduring piece of Mrs. Miniver lore is not a myth. It is absolute, documented truth. Greer Garson, the poised, 37-year-old actress embodying the matriarchal heart of Britain, Kay Miniver, fell in love with Richard Ney, the 27-year-old actor playing her idealistic, college-age son, Vin. The relationship ignited during the intense, cloistered atmosphere of filming, a classic case of life blurring with art under the high-pressure Klieg lights. They married in 1943, a mere year after the film's release, sending shockwaves through the studio system and the press. The marriage, which ended in a quiet divorce by 1947, created a permanent and bizarre footnote that forever warps the perception of their heartfelt on-screen mother-son scenes. Every concerned glance, every proud smile Kay gives Vin is now shadowed by off-camera romance. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's perfect propaganda family portrait was permanently cracked by a very real, very messy human scandal it never intended to frame. Fact 2. Winston Churchill declared it more powerful than a fleet of destroyers. The film's impact transcended box office receipts and critical acclaim to enter the realm of geopolitical strategy. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, the embodiment of Britain's bulldog spirit, famously declared that Mrs. Miniver had done more for the war effort than a flotilla of destroyers. This was not a casual quip for the papers. It was a strategic assessment. Winston Churchill and United States President Franklin D. Roosevelt recognized the film as a potent weapon in the battle for American public opinion. Franklin D. Roosevelt personally intervened to have the film rushed into theaters. He ordered its climactic People's War speech to be broadcast globally on The Voice of America and printed in full in mass circulation magazines like Time and Look. The movie was such a masterclass in pro-Ally sentiment that it reportedly left Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels both furious and grudgingly impressed by its effectiveness. A Hollywood melodrama had achieved the status of a military asset. Fact 3. The director openly admitted it was pure, calculated propaganda. Director William Wyler, a master filmmaker, was shockingly candid and clear-eyed about his intentions. He did not set out to make a subtle character study. He aimed to build a propaganda machine. William Wyler stated, "I wanted to make a film about the war that would help the British, hoping to shatter the pervasive American isolationism by showing United States audiences the brutal, intimate reality of the British home front." William Wyler, born in Alsace to a German Jewish family, had a deeply personal stake. He had relatives threatened by the Nazi regime. He later explained his method with chilling clarity. To make propaganda, you must be successful at the box office. Mrs. Miniver was perfect as propaganda for the British because it was a story about a family, about the kind of people audiences would care about. He weaponized empathy, melodrama, and star power, not just to tell a story, but to deliberately shift the conscience of a nation. Fact 4. The Vicar's speech was air, dropped as a weapon over Nazi Europe. The Vicar's rousing, tear-streaked People's War speech at the film's climax did not stay within the confines of the bombed-out church. It became a tangible tool of Allied psychological warfare. Co-written in a single frantic night by actor Henry Wilcoxon and director William Wyler after they rejected the studio's bland original version, it became known as the Wilcoxon speech. Its power was immediate and recognized at the highest levels. The United States Office of War Information translated the speech into dozens of languages, printed it on leaflets, and, in a breathtaking act of cinematic reality, airdropped it over German-occupied Europe to inspire resistance movements and erode enemy morale. A piece of Hollywood dialogue, scribbled on a script page in Culver City, was literally scattered from the skies over France, Holland, and Norway, transforming from dramatic climax to a direct call to arms. Fact 5. The director was haunted by the film after he enlisted. In a devastating twist of irony, William Wyler's own perspective on his creation shattered almost as soon as he finished it. Driven by the same convictions that fueled the film, he immediately enlisted in the United States Army Air Forces. He was serving overseas as a major in the Signal Corps, filming documentaries like The Memphis Belle, a story of a flying fortress, and witnessing the visceral, unvarnished horror of aerial combat when he won the Academy Award for Best Director for Mrs. Miniver. The experience was a brutal awakening. Confronting the real, mechanized terror of war, he later confessed with palpable regret that his hit film had portrayed war in too soft a light. The man who crafted the ultimate sanitized homefront tribute returned a veteran, haunted by the gap between his elegant propaganda and the ugly, chaotic truth he had witnessed through a bomber's viewfinder. Fact 6. The Oscar-winning heroine was a contractual prisoner. The iconic performance at the film's center was born not of artistic passion, but of corporate obligation. Greer Garson, the very face of graceful British resilience, did not want the part. The role was first offered to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's First Lady, Norma Shearer, who famously turned it down because she refused to play the mother of a grown son. Greer Garson, firmly under contract to the studio, was ordered to take the role against her will. She was reportedly unhappy with the initial script and wary of the character's domestic simplicity. The ultimate, defining irony? This forced assignment became her career-defining role, winning her the Academy Award for Best Actress. Her legendary, record-breaking 5.5-minute acceptance speech, a moment of seemingly effusive gratitude, was delivered for a part she had actively resisted, a testament to the strange alchemy of studio power and performer talent. Fact 7. The script was rewritten in real time as America entered the war. The production of Mrs. Miniver was a frantic race against the headlines, a screenplay evolving in sync with world history. Principal photography began in the autumn of 1940, when the United States was still officially neutral and deeply divided over intervention. As the script developed over months, America's political stance underwent a seismic shift, requiring constant, urgent revisions to make the film more overtly pro-British and anti-German. The pivotal, terrifying scene where Kay confronts the downed, arrogant German pilot in her own kitchen was reshot multiple times. The final, most confrontational version, where her fear curdles into fury and she slaps the smug invader, was filmed in February 1942, after the attack on Pearl Harbor had violently ended the debate and plunged America headlong into the global conflict. The film's moral certainty was forged in the fire of current events. Fact 8. The quintessential England was built on California backlots. Despite being a story celebrated as the quintessential portrait of English village life and Blitz spirit, Mrs. Miniver was almost entirely a Californian fabrication. With Britain an active, bombed-out war zone, genuine location shooting was impossible. The entire fictional village of Belem, its charming cottages, its train station, its riverbank, was constructed on Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's backlots in Culver City. The surrounding countryside was played by the hills and fields of California. This led to unavoidable, if overlooked, Americanisms in the landscape and what critics gently called California doubling. The cast, too, was a diplomatic blend, filled with fake Brits like Canadian Walter Pidgeon and American Teresa Wright, while countless genuine British actors were, as one historian wryly noted, kind of busy at the time fighting the actual war. Fact 9. The source material was a plotless sketchbook. The film's epic narrative of love, loss, and village solidarity is a monumental act of screenwriting invention. It is loosely based on Jan Struther's 1939 book, but the connection is charmingly tenuous. The book was a collection of gentle, whimsical, and deliberately plotless newspaper columns for the Times of London, musings from a well-to-do Chelsea woman about daffodils, shopping, and her children. Only the final essay took place after the war was declared. Screenwriters Arthur Wimperis, George Froschel, James Hilton, and Claudine West invented almost every iconic element audiences remember: the Dunkirk plotline, the menacing German pilot, the tense flower show competition with Lady Belden, Carol's tragic death, and the entire bombed church climax. They took a delicate, humorous sketch and, under the pressure of global war, painted a sprawling, heart-wrenching masterpiece of wartime melodrama. Fact 10. It rewrote Academy Awards history. Mrs. Miniver did not just win awards. It carved new grooves in Oscar history. At the 15th Academy Awards, it achieved a then unprecedented feat. It was the first film ever to receive nominations in all 4 acting categories: Best Actor Walter Pidgeon, Best Actress Greer Garson, Best Supporting Actor Henry Travers, and Best Supporting Actress Teresa Wright, who won. It was also the first film centered on the ongoing World War II to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. Its total of 6 Oscars, including Best Director, Actress, and Supporting Actress, cemented it not merely as a popular hit, but as a cultural and political milestone that the Hollywood establishment felt compelled to honor and amplify at a pivotal moment in history. Fact 11. The Little Ship to Dunkirk had a deep Titanic connection. The film's poignant subplot of Clem Miniver piloting his small pleasure boat, the Starling, to aid the miraculous evacuation at Dunkirk was a direct tribute to the real civilian little ships. But history contains an even more incredible thread. One of the actual private vessels that answered the call to Dunkirk was the Sundowner, a 56-foot motor yacht piloted by Commander Charles Lightoller. Charles Lightoller was not just any sailor. He was the most senior surviving officer of the Royal Mail ship Titanic, who had famously helped load lifeboats 30 years prior. At Dunkirk, he made the crossing with his son and a Sea Scout, evacuating 130 soldiers. This hidden link binds Hollywood's propaganda tribute to one of history's most famous maritime tragedies and its unlikely, twice heroic survivor. Fact 12. It pioneered the middlebrow propaganda war. Film scholars argue that Mrs. Miniver's true genius and influence lay in its strategic genre. It weaponized domestic, middlebrow storytelling, the realm of women's fiction and family melodrama, for high-stakes political ends. It deliberately used the utterly familiar and everyday: a comfortable home, a prized rose, a family breakfast, a young romance. These were not just settings, they were the ideological battlefield. This melodramatic mode made its propaganda insidiously effective, bypassing intellectual debate to appeal directly to the heart. It blended pathos, clear moral binaries, good, decent Minivers versus arrogant, inhuman Nazis, and the threat to domesticity to sway mass audiences. It proved you did not need battlefields to argue for total war. You could use a kitchen, and the argument would be far more potent. Fact 13. The on-screen mother and son were nearly contemporaries. The film engages in what is now known as classic Dawson casting, where actors in their 20s play teenagers. Greer Garson was 37 during filming, playing a mother to a son, Vin, stated to be not yet 20. The actor playing him, Richard Ney, was 26, a full-fledged adult. In stark reality, only 11 years separated the actress and her on-screen son. This narrow age gap, while common in Hollywood, makes their subsequent off-screen romance and marriage slightly less shocking in context, though no less scandalous for the era. It highlights the industry's habitual blurring of generational lines for the sake of star power and perceived marketability. Fact 14. Joseph Goebbels ordered a Nazi copycat film. The film's propaganda was so formidable it inspired a direct, if futile, counterattack from the enemy. After seeing the film, or at least studying detailed reports on its content and impact, Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels was reportedly furious. He recognized, with a propagandist's cold eye, the brilliant power of using a family-centric melodrama to bolster national spirit and demonize the enemy. In response, he ordered the production of a German counterpart, seeking to replicate the formula for the Third Reich. A Hollywood Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer production, celebrating British democracy and resilience, had briefly become the tactical gold standard for the fascist film apparatus, the ultimate backhanded compliment. Fact 15. Phantom cast members haunt the credits. In a bizarre bit of cinematic ghosting, early production notes, and the trade paper, The Hollywood Reporter originally listed actors Pat O'Hara, Elspeth Dudgeon, Dennis Chaldecott, and Eric Snowden in the cast. However, no trace of them exists in the final released film. Their scenes, likely small village roles or extended family moments, were cut in the editing process, a standard practice to tighten pace. Yet, they remain as phantom entries on early call sheets and cast lists, forgotten, minor casualties of the final edit, their performances lost to the relentless pursuit of the film's perfect, propulsive narrative rhythm. Fact 16. It became a radio sensation while the war still raged. The film's popularity was so immense and immediate that it transcended cinema while the conflict it depicted was still burning. It spawned not one, but 2 major radio adaptations broadcast to millions of American homes. The Screen Guild Theater presented a condensed 30-minute version in December 1942, and the prestigious Lux Radio Theater mounted a full 60-minute adaptation in December 1943. Both featured Greer Garson and Walter Pidgeon reprising their iconic roles, bringing the Miniver's trials and spirit directly into American living rooms. These broadcasts served to extend the film's propaganda reach and emotional grip, reinforcing its message for a public now fully engaged in the war effort. Fact 17. The sequel was forced to write out a scandal. The film's success inevitably led to a post-war sequel, The Miniver Story, released in 1950. But the Miniver family portrait had a glaring, awkward hole in it. Vin Miniver, the son. With Greer Garson and Richard Ney divorced since 1947, the idea of reuniting the former real-life couple as on-screen mother and son was untenable. The character was simply abruptly written out of the family story. He is never mentioned, his existence erased. Real-life marital discord and scandal forced a permanent, illogical plot hole into the fictional family's narrative, a silent but unmistakable scar from the off-screen drama that the pristine world of Bellum could not explain away. Fact 18. A secret Pride and Prejudice joke was hidden in the script. The film contains a wonderfully sly, metatextual wink to the star persona of Greer Garson. In a quiet domestic scene, as Clem and Kay discuss their son Vin's sudden engagement to Carol Belden, Clem, played by Walter Pidgeon, asks Kay, played by Greer Garson, with a smile, "Are you prejudiced?" This was a direct, playful reference to the immediate star-making role of Greer Garson prior to Miniver, Elizabeth Bennet, in the 1940 Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer lavish adaptation of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. It is a moment of self-aware Hollywood wit embedded in the wartime seriousness, a gift for attentive fans that momentarily breaks the fourth wall to celebrate the journey of the actress. Fact 19. The Rose Show was a microcosm of British class warfare. The seemingly gentle subplot about the annual Rose competition is a brilliant microcosm of simmering British class tension. The humble, middle-class station master, Mr. Ballard, daring to grow a rose to challenge the aristocratic Lady Belden's decades-long stranglehold on the trophy, is a quietly radical act. The film uses this small, genteel conflict to subtly argue for a more unified, democratic People's War ethos, where merit matters more than birthright. Lady Belden's eventual gracious concession awarding herself a consolation prize symbolizes the old order making way for the new collective spirit. A political point about social leveling and shared sacrifice is made not with speeches about democracy, but with the nurturing of a perfect bloom named the Mrs. Miniver. Fact 20. The final hymn was a deliberate battle cry. As the film closes in the bomb-damaged, open-air church, the surviving community, draped in blankets, rises to sing. The hymn chosen is no random selection of somber reflection. They sing Onward, Christian Soldiers, a hymn with an unmistakable marching cadence and lyrics about going into war with the cross of Jesus going on before. This was a deliberate, stirring call to arms. It transforms a moment of profound grief and loss into one of resilient, mobilized defiance. The film does not send audiences out weeping. It sends them out with a hymn of militant resolve on their lips, framing the struggle as a righteous crusade. The final note is not peace, but determined Christian warfare. Bonus fact: the real Mrs. Miniver's creator lived a life of secret rebellion. The true story of Jan Struther, the woman who created Mrs. Miniver, is a tragic, complex counterpoint to the film's unifying patriotism. She wrote the original sunny domestic columns not from a place of contented bliss, but as an escape from her own stifling, unhappy marriage to a London businessman. As war loomed, she fell deeply in love with a Jewish refugee from Austria. In 1940, she left her husband and children behind for what was billed as a brief lecture tour in America, championed as the real-life Mrs. Miniver. Trapped by the wholesome, steadfast persona she had accidentally created, she could never return. She lived a secret life in New York with her lover, all while being paraded as the embodiment of British home-front virtue. Haunted by the gulf between her fiction and her reality, she would tell audiences, "I am not Mrs. Miniver. I am a working woman." Her creation became a global propaganda icon, a weapon for good, while she remained severed from her family, her country, and the idealized, fictional self that outshone her own complicated truth. Mrs. Miniver endures not merely as a well-made film, but as a monumental historical paradox. A story about the very essence of Englishness, fabricated entirely in California. A tender family drama, deliberately engineered as a sharp weapon of global persuasion. An Oscar-winning performance, delivered by an actress who fought against the role. It captured the precise, volatile moment Hollywood realized it could and had a moral duty to shape the destiny of nations. Not with documentaries of battle, but with the emotionally potent arsenal of melodrama. The sanctity of home, the fear of loss, the love we are willing to die for. Its legacy is measured not just in statuettes, but in leaflets floating down over occupied fields, in the shifted opinions of a hesitant superpower, and in the uncomfortable, brilliant truth that sometimes the most effective way to sell the grim necessity of war is to package it as a story about preserving peace, about all the small precious things we have to lose. So the next time you see a film about unity, sacrifice, and the home front, remember the Minivers in their California village. Remember the real, fractured lives, the personal scandals, the directorial guilt, and the author's exile that built that perfect, powerful, necessary myth.